the silence that watches. Morning brought a silence so dense it felt almost physical. Every sound, the creak of a step, the rustle of clothing, the breath leaving one's lungs, seemed swallowed before it could fully form. It was not the silence of an empty house. It was the silence of something listening. As Marina moved through the hallway, she noticed how the shadows clung to corners even in daylight, as if refusing to retreat. The light that entered from the windows dulled before touching the floor, like the house absorbed it. This part of the home, the long upstairs corridor, felt colder and the air heavier, as though something unseen pressed gently against her chest each time she walked through it. Oh! On the surface, everything seemed still, yet nothing felt still at all. The mirror that won't stay hidden. The attic, dusty and stagnant, continued to change every time they entered it. The large mirror, once safely covered beneath a heavy cloth, now revealed itself each morning, uncovered, repositioned and gleaming faintly, despite the dim light. What disturbed Marina most was that the mirror's surface appeared cleaner each time she saw it. While the attic remained thick with dust, the mirror stayed spotless, as though unseen hands wiped it carefully after nightfall. Worse still, the room reflected in the mirror often appeared slightly darker than the actual attic, as if the reflection belonged to a version of the space where light could not properly exist. Sometimes Marina caught a brief glimpse of movement in that dim mirror world. A faint shift, a suggestion of a shape withdrawing just as her eyes focused. The movements were too controlled, too deliberate to be dismissed. Whispers in the walls. As the sun sank behind the tree line that evening, the first deep vibrations in the walls began. They were barely perceptible, not quite sound, not quite motion, but the entire house felt as though it were inhaling slowly, expanding with a presence awakening inside the wood and plaster. The vibrations soon grew into soft, rhythmic patterns, not random, not structural. They resembled footsteps taken somewhere behind the walls, pacing back and forth with unsettling patience. Artyom felt them through the floorboards, faint tremors traveling upward through his legs. Marina felt something else, a cold drift of air moving behind her, though every window in the house was shut tight. It carried no breeze, only the sensation of something passing, something without a body yet with undeniable intention. As night deepened, the house settled into a strange calm that wrapped around the couple like a weighted blanket. It was the kind of calm that appears just before something reveals itself. Oh, the room that rejects them. The small bedroom at the end of the upstairs hallway, one they had never used, had taken on a presence of its own. Its door, which they always left open, now shut itself repeatedly, often locking from the inside. The air behind that door grew colder each day, despite no logical explanation for the temperature drop. Inside, the walls began to show stains that hadn't existed before, dark streaks running downward, uneven and smeared, as though fingers coated in something old and grim had dragged across them. The floors creaked not under their weight, but as if someone else had paced there moments earlier. Coal. The atmosphere in the room was suffocating. Marina felt it immediately each time she crossed the threshold. A pressure against her ribs, a deep instinct warning her not to stay. The room did not want them there. It had belonged to something else long before they arrived, and it seemed determined to reclaim its solitude. The first true manifestation. Late that night, while preparing food downstairs, a sudden heavy impact shook the ceiling directly above them. It was too forceful, too deliberate to be the movement of the old house. It sounded like something large falling, or something falling on purpose. So, when they reached the upper floor, the cold radiating from the small bedroom was sharp, almost metallic in the air. The door stood open. At the center of the floor lay the fabric that once covered the attic mirror, crumpled as though someone had carried it there and let it fall. The room felt inhabited, not in a living, breathing sense, but with a presence whose form the human mind was not meant to perceive. Every instinct urged them to leave, yet they lingered, caught between denial and the dread growing inside them. What awakens in the attic? Later, driven by a grim compulsion, they climbed the attic steps again. The mirror was gone. Not moved. Not broken. Gone. In its place lay a trail of footprints. Small, but not childlike. Narrow, yet not adult. The shape unnatural. The proportions just slightly wrong. They pressed deep enough into the dust to show weight, yet no outline of toes could be discerned. Only smooth, elongated impressions like the marks of something walking upright, without feet. The footprints led directly toward the attic opening, as if something had descended into the house during the night. Beside them lay a strip of torn wallpaper from the lower floors. Scratched into it was a human-like figure, etched with erratic but determined strokes. Not drawn, not sketched, carved. The lines cut deeply, as if the wallpaper had been clawed for hours by something that understood only shape, not detail. It was the same figure that had appeared on the mirror. The same figure that watched Marina from the shadows of the bedroom. The same figure that had stood beside their bed on the very first night. The house takes its first breath. As they stood in the attic, the temperature dropped with unnatural abruptness. The rafters creaked slowly, deeply like lungs expanding. The dust on the floor stirred though there was no breeze. The house inhaled. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, audibly. A slow, hollow intake of air as though something vast and ancient beneath the floorboards had awakened fully after years of dormancy. The sound traveled through the walls, down the staircase, into the very foundation. A breath that did not belong to any living creature, but to something crafted from darkness, memory, and abandonment. The house had awakened, and whatever had woken with it was no longer content to remain unseen. This was only the beginning.